evening as we find out more about the Belize School Counsellor Association. We have with us on set Caryl Brannon, who is the Secretary of the Association. President-elect, great. And we have Samson Jacobs, who's a counselor at Sadie Vernon High School. And on the end, we have Greta Jenkins, who's a counselor for Excelsior High School. Good morning and welcome. And thank you so much for being here. So Caryl, you know, the question I was asking you during the break, I think is great to kind of set the tone for the conversation. This is essentially just school counselors coming together saying they want a representative organization, right?
Yes, right now our position within the ministry is still a bit iffy. Most of our counselors at the high school level are teachers teaching life skills and doing counseling. At the primary school level right now, we have counselors attached to different management. So in my case, I'm under government primary schools. I should be working with 6 schools. There's under the Anglican primary schools, there's under Methodist primary schools, so we're not assigned to one particular school. And we're still teachers / counselors. There isn't a position for counselors within the education rules. So in order for us to get our benefits, we still have to be teachers in essence with counseling responsibilities. So that's one of the things as an association we're working on.
Is there any way?
I'm just trying to figure out how you meet the needs of primary schoolers.
On my end, I'm trying to figure out why hasn't government or anybody within this particular system moved to make certain amendments to afford for a full-time, a dedicated counselor per school, or however that part of it works. Why do you have to share duties between teaching and counseling in order for you to be recognized?
Well, one of the things that we need to be aware of is our society and our culture. We still have people looking at counseling as for crazy people. So it's just now that we're seeing all these different issues coming up that it's more widespread, that we're actually talking about some of these issues, that we're recognizing the need for counselors. So that's one issue. It's a legal process in terms of the education rules, because as an association we have met with the senior management team of the ministry, and it has to go through a legal process to amend the education rules to get the position of counselor. At this point, we recently celebrated School Counseling Awareness Week. We didn't do much in terms of media rounds and all that, because one of the things we're trying to get our counselors to see is that we need the data. At this point, we can't just say, well, we're dealing with all these issues, we have so many cases, we have to start giving the data. And I think as a culture in Belize too, that's another thing that we're not willing to work on. So this year, the executive decided that we're not going to do a social, we're not going to do media rounds, we're going to have a working session where we work on the data, we work on planning and having committees to put into place the things that we need to push for this move.
To justify what you're asking for. You kind of preempted my question. I'm going to ask anyway, even if just anecdotally, because, and we have high school counselors here, we'll talk to you, but I want to talk about the primary school level, because I'm sure any parent who has a child in Standard 4, Standard 5, Standard 2 saying, oh, my child doesn't need a counselor. How severe are the problems that you see within the primary school system?
Well, I deal with Stella Maris a lot, so I deal with a whole other set of issues as well. But the behavior issues is one of the main concerns at this point. The removal of corporal punishment led to more behavioral issues than we had before, and kids are aware that you can't lash me anymore. So that's one of the big things. One of the things that I deal with a lot is grief in recent times. And it's, for me personally speaking, I can't speak for the other counselors within the other schools, but my issues are more behavior. So I would like to be in one school where I can set up programs and to be more preventative, because as counselors we should do prevention and intervention, but then you have to be able to manage the time. You still have to deal with some teachers who don't understand the role of the counselor, so you still have to educate them as to what the role of the counselor is. So it's difficult, but it's a work in progress.
Let's talk about the realities at the high schools that you guys are at and what it's like. I mean, so you are dedicated counselors, right? Or do you have to manage a teaching responsibility?
Also.
You still have to teach.
They're still in only one school.
If I could talk from high school, I am a teacher counselor, so I teach life skills 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And I teach social studies as well, right? And I am expected to do individual counseling, group counseling, programs for the staff, programs for students. And then you have all the other NGOs who come and give you their tasks to do. So
wait, so I am a high schooler battling major issues and I have a meltdown, but you're in your social studies class. What happens then?
then you have to leave the social studies class and ask a teacher or warden to hold the class, then you go and deal with the issue.
And this is my problem.
Yeah.
And I'll put it out for what it is. I attended St. John's College for high school. And from then, it's been a puzzle for me to understand how that works. Because you have a counseling session that is scheduled, right? Whether you have an issue then or you don't have an issue, it's scheduled Friday at 2 o'clock, you need to go and speak with this individual. But it becomes impersonal even though you're sitting right there in front of the counselor, because the counselor just asks you, so is there anything wrong with you today? How are you doing in school? There is nothing that the person goes into your background, where you're coming from. What are some of the challenges that you're facing either at home or at school with your peers or what have you?
Well, this year what I did, I don't teach first form. So what I do to get to meet my first form, I develop a student data form. And that is what I have on there, like maybe if the student come from a single parent family, the background, if they have any allergies and other issues that they might have. Right now I'm fortunate this semester that I have 4 interns from UB who are assisting me in terms of getting those data from my school, right? But the reality is that school counselors are seen as the miracle worker, and we're supposed to change all the students' behavior overnight. And between you and I know counseling is not overnight.
That's a daunting challenge.
Oh my God. I'm just trying to figure out managing the classroom load and still being able, because an average school is a couple hundred students.
Well, one of the issues, and I'm speaking more from the association's perspective, that we've discussed during meetings is that it depends on your principal. At this point, the principal is the person in charge of the counselor within their school, since there's no set rule, no set. So if you have a principal that understands what a counselor should do, then you are better able to fulfill your counseling responsibilities. If you don't have a principal that is understanding of the role of the counselor, then you're left in a situation sometimes worse than the one that Samson is in.
Yeah, and that is a challenge I find too, because sometimes the teachers, the administration, they see counselor as having nothing to do, and so they feel like you do nothing, and also you are the miracle worker. When a child is acting up, what is the counselor doing? The counselor is not doing anything, you know. So those are some of the challenges, and like Samson said, we have to teach, and then when you teach a regular subject, you also have to do your lesson plans, you have to do grades, quiz, exams, so it's a lot.
But even in counseling though, that changes the dynamic of the relationship you can have with your student. Because here's the thing, if I want to trust you, Greta, with the things that I'm struggling with at home, I also don't want to face you in my social studies class or English class, because then
That sense of confidentiality.
it's just not ideal, you know? So that brings in a whole other level of whether or not you can be able to effectively do your job, no matter how much you try.
Actually, you have most schools who utilize the school counselor on their admin team as well. So the students see 1 as a counselor, 2 as a teacher, and then 3 as an administrator. Right? So you wear 3 hats. I always tell students when I'm in the classroom teaching, I am a teacher, and then when I go into the actual office, then I'm a counselor. So how you strike the balance between 2? It's a difficult task.
And
sorry.
Not only that, if you're in the classroom and you have to discipline a child, if I just finish disciplining you and I have a session with you after that, you don't want to talk to me because you're mad with me, you know. So
Let me ask this, right? Most professions, you have development as an ongoing thing. You go and you take a course that allows you to refresh, to learn new methods, etc., etc. In your particular situation as teachers, I know that during the summer break, you guys do your workshop to prepare for the upcoming school year, etc. But what time is afforded for you guys to do any kind of refresher, to do any kind of continuing studies that allows you to better be able to deal with these issues with the students at that level?
Well, we actually do workshops for counselors. So during the continuous professional development in August, there is a week that the association, along with the ministry, plan and carry out based on our membership. We ask what are the issues that they're facing at this time, and we work to plan sessions based on the needs of the association. But we're also trying to push, we actually created a data collection instrument during the 2016-2017 school year. So we're trying to use that data to plan sessions as well, because some people are dealing with maybe relationship issues in one school, but then when we look at widespread of all the schools or of all our members, then we may see through the referrals that there's another need that we're not tapping into. So we as the association plan for continuous professional development in August, and we also have meetings throughout the school year where we try to put in trainings. We don't just, because we have counselors coming from PG, from Caryl, so we try to not just have a meeting to do association business, but also to have some kind of training so that we get the most out of those time that we spend together.
I mean, to be fair, we're moving in the right direction in terms of recognizing that there should be a counselor in each school. Hopefully we'll see the need in every primary school as well. But what I'm hearing is that perhaps you're not being given enough time and resources to be able to efficiently execute your work. And we're living in an era where I feel that people are more aware of mental health concerns. People are more cognizant of seeking a counselor as a remedy to overcome a particular challenge. In Belize City, for example, we're talking about trauma. The impact of trauma on children and young people just by living in a neighborhood where you hear gunshots every night. Worse yet if you've lost a family member to it. So the need and demand seems to be increasing, but perhaps the formalization of the system hasn't responded. Now, I use that as a segue into this. Like our good old police department, you got 1-2 rogue cops that just make everybody else look bad, right? Tell me about what you are doing to formalize your own selves as well, to ensure that those who take on the responsibility of a counselor, whether trained as a counselor or as a nice teacher that they put as the counselor, will see the necessary will ensure that they are responsible in their role and can represent all of you well. What do you do to make sure that there's that professionalism?
At this point, since we're still so small, we're trying to push our ethics because we have developed a code of ethics, which we're in the process of reviewing to include this day and age cyberbullying and all those other things that weren't included in the original. But since we're still young and still starting out, we're focused on more our members, and most of our members aren't the counselors out there who are the rogue ones. We're trying to get more recognition. We're trying to get more counselors on board so that we can reprimand, we can put out statements and all that when we have people who aren't doing what they're supposed to do. But at this point, we haven't been able to work on that as yet.
That must be a challenge because then people, I remember hearing parents say, oh, the counselor talk about my business or my family business. And that's always, confidentiality is like primary. What are you hoping that with the establishment of the association, and I hear that you're liaising quite a bit, there's a counseling unit in the Ministry of Education. There's also the mental health department or mental health unit for the Ministry of Health. How are you working to tie into these groups to kind of get the support you need to formalize your structure?
Well, we partner with also NDAC and different organizations as well when it comes to our trainings. But one of the things, I think recently mental health unit along with UNICEF and different, we're doing the adolescent mental health curriculum and all that. So our members are present at those workshops. With the school counseling and care unit, we actually just lost Colin. He was the coordinator and he has moved on. So that is another issue that we face too, because when we review our membership, we have members who are moving out of working as school counselors and working in other areas, either Ministry of Health, going back into the classroom. So it's kind of difficult, but we're trying our best to partner as best as we can. And we do most of our partnerships a lot during the CPD time at August. We build partnerships during that time when we need help in terms of delivering for the issues that the counselors are facing.
Can I go in a slightly different direction here in respect of the question I'm about to ask? You guys are both counselors in co-ed schools on the south side of Belize City. Between the boys and the girls, what are some of the most pressing issues that you've seen them come to you or you've been able to get out of them during these counseling sessions?
Well, for me, my boys have a lot of challenge with marijuana use. In some homes, it is seen as nothing, right? And so the parent doesn't see anything wrong with them smoking marijuana. So a lot of times you see them coming to school high. So when a child comes to school high, most of the time, they behave disrespectfully. And then the challenge is, what do you do with this child now? He's here already, he's high, he cannot go into the classroom, you cannot send him back home. So now you have to like babysit this child because until that high wears off. Another challenge, one of my biggest challenge is the area where our school is, you know, it is a hot spot. And a lot of our students get harassed coming to school. At Excelsior, we have mostly boys at our school. And a lot of time, because of the area they live into, they get harassed when they're coming to school. And so they have been bullied a lot. I have to utilize CYDP a lot because they have a, what's the word? Can't bring the word, but they go and mediation group. So most of the time when they get harassed, I would report to CYDP, and then they would go out and find out what is the issue and try to calm down the session. But it's a challenge because the three school, Excelsior, Sadie, Vernon, and Mad Williams have been doing courses together, and even when our students have to go over to Mad Williams, sometimes the guys from George Street gangs are right around the school, and they harass the students. Sometimes they have to run back, they can't go to their classes. So those are some of the issues I find. And the last one is I have a lot of students who have lost parents. So like Caryl said, we have to deal with a lot of grief because they've lost their parents, they're living with relatives or family members, and sometimes, most of the times, they're not treated well, you know.
For me, with the boys, I see substance abuse being a major issue and gang violence. The females, I see more relationship issues, domestic violence, and also cyberbullying. Right? Sadly, it's between the females that they bring down each other. One of the issues with, like what Ms. Jenkins said earlier, is the partnership with the three schools. So we'll find out that if my students would go over to Mad Williams, they have a fear of going to Mad and Excelsior, and we purchase our own bus. So what we do, we drop the students, and then recently we had a young man who they jumped in and they break his arm, and so what the principal decided that, you know what, we need to go back for these students in the evening. Of course, it requires finance, human resources, and so originally when they were planning the whole amalgamation of the three schools, I assumed that they were not taking the risk factors for these, especially young men.
Samson, you're talking about something, I can't believe that. So when they move from one school to another, they're being attacked because of turf issues.
But there was no consideration given to it at the planning stage of the amalgamation process.
I think when we were at that planning stage, and we had brought that up, and that's why they had said they were going to provide transportation, but they only provide transportation going. So the problem is coming back, and we had also brought up that issue, but that was not really looked into. So
the thing is, coming back, you're at the mercy of the world, and in this case, if you're from a rival neighborhood, even if you're not actively involved, the fact that you're from Baca Martins, for argument's sake, and have to go all the way to Excelsior, you have to traverse through different neighborhoods. Your safety is at risk.
I guess because we are on the ground doing the work, we are exposed to it. Because, for example, when we play sports, everybody knows that Sadie Vernon is a school known for basketball, but when our team is playing, we have to transport the students to game and back to school. So when they reach the school, then most of them are from the St. Martin's area, so they can go about, but safety is an issue. With the partnership as well with the different NGOs, when we send them on working suspension, we have issues for them doing the working suspension because they cannot go to Department of Youth Services. They cannot go to CYDP because of the Majestic area, so that's a challenge that we experience as well.
Again, we're digressing, but it's an interesting conversation nonetheless. It shows you how limited we've become in terms of being able to move around our very own city in this case.
Small city.
Right?
And you're talking about young boys, let me be very specific, who are in school, who are trying to essentially go the alternative route than being on the streets.
And another challenge they face is even in their own neighborhood. They want to come to school, but the people in there are trying to recruit them. So it's like a battle because they're trying to get an education, but others are trying to recruit them. So they have to, and if they don't, they might feel scared even in their own neighborhood. So it's really a challenge for boys today.
And really a challenge that we don't have sufficient counselors to be able to address. These are major issues. You're talking about life consequences for going for a class, your math class, you know, or your special class that you have to travel
What
for.
I'm looking at as well, counseling, and you guys will forgive me if I'm wrong. Counseling is a series of sessions, right, that occur over time with an end goal being to allow the person who is seeking counseling to be able to overcome or address whatever issue may be plaguing him or her, whatever the case may be. But I find it that with all your workload and with the fact that you have these many students to address, how do you begin to build that sense of confidence with any one person? I am an outspoken person, so I could go to counseling and sit down and pour out everything in one session, and you just need to recommend to me what you believe I should do. But when you're dealing with someone who's introverted or someone who has been dealing with trauma that they can't break out of that shell, one 15-minute session per week, how do you get to the bottom of it?
One of the tools I use, and I find it to my advantage, is because we have a lot of students who have a lot of needs. I try to meet certain needs. Like, for example, like if a child needs, like my office, as soon as I land on the compound in the morning, students are coming in. Basic thing, I have an iron board, an iron, pin, needle and thread, buttons, everything. I give them, like, I also started a feeding program, and that's from my own pocket because the school cannot afford it. So once I have been meeting those needs, I find it easy for them to trust me.
What I do, I have 3 strategies. Normally when I go into class, because I see life skills class as a group counseling, so when I start the class, I would normally ask them how are they feeling, or just to tap into their emotions. Basically, based on their response, then I would pick on that after class. But in a counseling session, if I find a student that is very introverted, I try to do the art therapy and game therapy, so I get them relaxed and comfortable, and I engage them in that form of therapy, and then you find out that the student will open up to you, right?
And I like being in the farmer school because I get to color and draw and do puzzles and everything with my kids, and sometimes they're not even aware that I'm getting information from what they're doing.
Play therapy is important.
Some of them, in terms of just having them draw their family, the way that they draw the people, where the placements are, people are missing when I start asking questions, that I gather a lot of information that they are not aware that I'm getting from their work.
So you are the new president-elect of the association. What are your plans moving forward?
Well, this year right now we're working on data. I'm pushing for the data because we need to be able, in order to push for anything that we want with the ministry, we have to have the data to show this is what we're dealing with. These are the amount of referrals that our counselors are dealing with. On our data collection instrument, we have in terms of counseling related duties, because we have the life skills, we have the program. Some people do drug awareness week, bullying, anti-bullying week, and then we have also a space where we have other duties that are not related to counseling. So if it's you're teaching another class that is not life skills, what class is that? How many classes do you have? How many hours? Because I feel it's very important that we have this data to show. If we don't have data, we can't push for any changes.
It's validating your point, your case,
So we're working on expanding the membership, targeting counselors all over the country. And we ask, even if they're not a paying member of the association, even if they want to be on our mailing list and attend sessions that we have, that still allows us to gather information as to what are the challenges that they're dealing with in their school. So this year, as president-elect, we're working on data and we're working on expanding the membership.
All right. Well, we wish you the best of luck, not just with the association, but the daily work that you do within our school system. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
We're going to go ahead and take a final break, and when we come back, we'll have our wrap-up, so stay tuned.